It's been 4 years since YouTuber Coldboy interviewed Rawson Marshall Thurber about him helming the Division movie. So why am I talking about this now? Well, even though it's probably been stuck in production hell for at least 3 years, if it's even still happening at all, the Division is finally starting to hit its stride, and we've had a DLC in addition to talks about the Division 3. That gives me some hope that we might actually finally see this project come to fruition. However, a project like this, especially since it's a video game adaptation and not very well known, has some serious pitfalls that it needs to avoid in order to be successful. Let's dive into these possible pitfalls to hopefully help this project succeed. First, we'll discuss what we know about the movie so far, and then we'll explore where and how it could falter and what it needs to do to be successful. So first off, the movie is being written and directed by Rawson Marshall Thurber, who is best known for directing Dodgeball, Skyscraper, and Red Notice. I'm not sure which of these he wrote, but all of these are action and or comedy movies. While it seems like he's got the action down, the tone of the Division is much more gritty and dark. If there is comedy, it's probably going to need to be dark comedy to be pulled off in this universe. He said in the interview that he is an OG Division fan and has played all the way since the Division 1 Alpha. That is some serious credentials. He definitely should understand the tone and the lore of the Division. While being a hardcore fan of a franchise doesn't guarantee success, it definitely helps. One pitfall that fans often run into, though, when writing about something they love, is that they just want to cram so much in there. They're too invested in either the characters or concepts that they force them in even when they don't belong or can't work properly in the story. Rawson is going to have to be able to let go of his own personal wants to better serve the story, otherwise we're going to get an overstuffed or incoherent fan film. Rawson mentioned some things that were encouraging. He's got Jessica Chastain and Jake Gyllenhaal to star in the project, who are, of course, two absolutely terrific actors. One might even say, and I'm honestly on board with Jake Gyllenhaal being one of the best actors of his generation, by far. Rawson mentioned that the Dark Zone will play heavily in this movie. Of course, from a gameplay and story perspective, the Dark Zone is an incredible playground for all sorts of ideas and tension. It's the no man's land, the crucible, the place where loyalties and our true nature are revealed. It's almost like a pocket Hunger Games, and you could have a whole movie just set in the DZ. In addition, this project has some unique advantages compared to some other properties. Number one, it doesn't have any strong main character like Master Chief to adapt. Number two, it doesn't have any fantasy or sci-fi elements that require a lot of world building. We saw the Halo series completely fall down, and a huge part of that was the portrayal of Master Chief. When adapting a character, you really have to pull off the spirit of that character, otherwise, why adapt that particular character at all? If you deviate from what the character is, you're bound to alienate 90% of the fans of that property who knew who the character was before. Keener might kind of fall into this category actually, and we'll examine him in a bit, but he isn't the main character because the Division doesn't really have a main character. For all intents and purposes, the player character is a nameless, faceless soldier, enforcer, agent of the Division who is an absolute bloodthirsty menace everywhere we go. Most interesting games have a fantasy or sci-fi world or element to them that makes them more compelling for long-form storytelling and or gameplay opportunities. When translating that into a TV show, and especially for a movie, this medium just doesn't have as much time to explain all these special mechanics and new concepts as a game or a book does. And most of the time, explanations have to be organic to the story. Moviegoers, for the most part, don't want the characters on screen to explain the premise beyond maybe a paragraph, much less read a tutorial on how the world works. The Division is set in the modern world with very quick and understandable premise, especially for the global medical emergency that we had a couple of years ago. While we got some great starts here, I do have some concerns. There are definitely going to be some challenges that become readily apparent once we dive in a bit. So let's discuss some of the challenges and easy pitfalls that a Division movie could fall into. Video game adaptations are known for their poor quality. Rawson even recognizes this. Fortunately, even as we continue to see some bad adaptations, we've seen some truly excellent ones such as the Fallout TV show and at least the first season of The Last of Us. The two biggest problems of a project like this for The Division are skills and the current story. Let's discuss skills first. Most skills don't make much sense and would be much better off replaced by real-life counterparts. For example, the sticky bomb, chem launcher, and mortar turret are probably the most plausible since they're just a grenade launcher in different forms, so you could kind of pass these off. None of the healing skills make any sense, even in the Division universe, and would detract from the stakes of the story. The game currently says they use like nanobots or something, which is pretty far-fetched. Also, if the characters can just get healed by nanobots, what need does anybody have for medical supplies? It's problematic for the stakes of the story because our heroes will always have a convenient way to be healed up, so it'll be hard to see them being in any real danger. The assault drone, striker turret don't make any sense. The ballistics of bullets coming out of them would be terrible. The shock trap might work in a more sci-fi show kind of way. The fire turret and the sniper turret are too small, though they could feasibly work in theory. The sniper turret would probably have to be carried around disassembled and then reassembled with a really long barrel to be actually useful. Seeker mines would be single use. I mean, it's a grenade that rolls. And when it blows up, it doesn't reappear. Pulses actually, they might be kind of one of the most plausible because there's no really way to do this in real life, but you can kind of hand wave it with radar or something like that. The bombardier drone is actually probably the most realistic, and considering it's kind of in use in war today in Ukraine, though those drones are they just blow up as opposed to dropping munitions. The blinder firefly would make more sense as a drone or a trap or a seeker mine or something like that. The stinger hive actually would make a lot of sense if it was just a bunch of single shot pistols in a ball. The other hives, well, on the other hand, would make no sense. Basically, the stinger hive is just kind of like a grenade. Shields would be better served by being actual riot shields that look like real life ones. The deflector shield is obviously total bullocks. The defender drone would be much more believable as a turret ADS system like you see in some other games. The smart cover is, well, like, what? Can we even... It's a bipod, but I don't know. Just, that wouldn't make any sense. So as we can see, the skills in this game wouldn't really translate to the big screen, especially for viewers who aren't familiar with the series. If these are going to be used in the movie, it's going to, at the very least, harm the viewer's suspension of disbelief, and at worst, completely break the stakes and tension in the movie. That's not great. Now let's talk about the current story. Rawson said the movie would be set at the beginning of the outbreak in New York City. In my mind, that immediately screams Keener being the main character, at least one of the main characters. Spoiler alert for the Division storyline if you don't already know it, which hopefully you all do, but all the same, if you don't know the Division story, watch the NGN recap video and then come back. So Keener was an awesome villain in the first game, so good in fact that they shoehorned him back into the Division 2. It seems like it would be an awesome story to see his descent into madness and villainy. However, as everyone knows, the Division storytelling has always been a bit chaotic and hard to follow. This is especially true for the latest reveals, which are attempting some sort of redemption arc for Keener. I think most players aren't really buying it, especially with the conveniences that have been used to justify it, such as Keener surviving us killing him, Theo's 180 from being dead to being our friend now, and finally the rogues using a WMD for 2 supposedly quote-unquote targeted strikes on quote-unquote hunters. All of this is justified about as well as can be for an obvious about face by those writing the story, but it still feels flimsy. The movie either has to ignore this, which will piss off a section of the fan base, or commit to it, which is a very tough road to travel. But the Division's chaotic storytelling is demonstrated in many other mediums as well. There are a handful of books, most of which aren't being published anymore. I personally don't know these stories, but it seems like some of them, especially like April's story, which is particularly told through the books, could be a really good one to delve into. I think Rawson would have to just assume that no one has read the books in order for these to be a success. Relying on the viewers having any idea who she is wouldn't really be a solid bet. Same with all the other sources of lore. They'd all have to be treated as if no one knows them because a minuscule amount of the player base, much less the movie's audience, knows about them. We've got the first game and its DLCs, the second game and its DLCs, some of which retcon each other, the Descent comms, seasons, comic books, novels, and even a small web series. None of these sources can be built off of. They simply need to be ignored or retold in the movie. I think most of the potential lies in the immediate lead up and the aftermath of the outbreak. This is a unique subject that this franchise tackles better than most other post-apocalyptic stories do. Most of these other stories are set years or even generations after the apocalypse. It would be really cool to get something like a spy thriller as the NSA is trying to figure out what's happening, how the Division leadership is reacting, etc. And immediately afterwards, there's the mystery of the hunters and what happened and all those kind of things. While those of us who have played the games unfortunately would have the answer to some of these questions, other viewers would have no idea and it could be really interesting for them. Setting the plot at these points would also reduce the amount of exposition required. We can't onboard with the current characters after the events of the games. That would take way too much explaining. Imagine the first scene being an argument between the president and the vice president about the creation and purpose of the Strategic Homeland Division, which would set the stage for the outbreak and the start of the story, but also explain what the SHD does. Or you can have an argument amongst the president's cabinet about Operation Dark Winter and the creation of the SHD, something like that. Anyway, there's a ton of potential here, and the premise would absolutely carry it beyond just a single movie. If there does end up being a series or a movie, in my opinion, they should stay far, far away from the current characters. For example, let's look back at Theo. He was an extremely annoying villain who became an even more annoying ally, and we're just supposed to brush off all the bad stuff he did in the past. Any collision with characters in the games is entering into a minefield of possible continuity errors and confusion for players. We've already seen that in the current story with Keener being brought back and all this kind of crap. I can't help thinking that this project would be much better as a series. The open-ended nature of the world lends itself much better to long-form storytelling. The movie definitely could be successful, but might also be a missed opportunity. If they're expecting it to be a blockbuster success, they're going to have to market it like they did the first Division, which had an awesome marketing campaign. The Division, in spite of its brief spike in popularity, I think has faded to obscurity in the general audience, so it would need something significant to attract everyone's attention. Alright, so to sum it all up, a Division movie is extremely risky, as we've seen many video game adaptations falter in the past. But this project is helmed by a fan, has some unique advantages, and with this advice, could be a huge success. This world really has an incredible premise for countless compelling stories. Let's hope Ubisoft is ready to capitalize when we finally see this hit the big screen. Thanks everyone for watching. That's all I've got for this one. What are you hoping to see from the Division movie? Where do you think it could fall short? Let's get this discussion going in the comments. I always love seeing and responding to your opinions. It's the best part of making these videos. Like and subscribe and let me know if this type of content is what you'd like to see. Until next time, agents, this has been Dispatch. Take care out there.